welcome to Learn with us. I can tell you that if Gina and we don't behave in this session very well, it's because we have been sitting here for 36 hours. So we are a little bit exaggerated right now, to be honest. So welcome.
You'll behave.
Yeah, we will try to behave. First of all, a very warm welcome to both of you. Lance, your sound is not turned on. What about you, Dave? Do you have sound?
I have sound.
Yeah, and Jeff?
Am I on?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Everyone's on.
Yeah. So a warm welcome. I know it's early hours in the US right now, and I can tell you a little anecdote just to get us started with this, because the reason why you gentlemen are on this session is because Lance was thrown in from MBO Europe, because basically you guys invested in equipment that is not that common in Europe. Isn't that the case, Lance?
Yeah, that's generally the case. Yeah, we've got both sides of the coin here. We've got the inline and the offline, which is really rare in Europe from MBO. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and another thing that is also, a fact I believe I can say without any exaggeration or too much of an exaggeration is basically that I'm just trying to see what is technical issues here. Just hang on a second here. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have audience here, so I don't know why it's not okay, but we are live. I can see that we have audience. No worries. No, I just can't help think about that. When we started talking about this, Lance, it was also a little bit new to you to do this in a live environment, right?
Just a little bit. We do these in America a little bit different fashion, but. Yeah, worldwide, it's very interesting for us, because I think we're speaking now to not just American type of finishing. We're speaking to people that are going to have finishing requirements beyond what we see over here. So this is exciting for us.
I am under all circumstances very excited, because we had a little session last week, the three of us, and what I think is quite interesting from my perspective is. Dave, you operate a quite big operation. Was it 3,000 employees you have?
Correct.
Oh,
well. So with that many people, I take that you spend most of time signing the salary checks, right?
Not me. No. Not my job. Thank goodness.
Okay, so you have a more interesting job to do, basically.
I do.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your company and what you do in that company. I think that story is quite interesting. And we have plenty of time, because Lance was playing along with the webinar jam, so we actually bought ourselves like 5 minutes more. So tell us a little bit who you are, Dave, and what we do here.
Okay, so name is Dave Johannes. I'm the Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for More. More is a group of companies that are very focused on the nonprofit space here in the U.S. and a little bit of international as well. We do work for people like Wounded Warrior, Shriners Hospitals, a number of the different medical charities, a number of religious charities. So we've got a very broad audience, and we represent the full supply chain. So in addition to printing and mailing, we do caging, which is, we accept the donations and distribute them to the organizations that we mail for. We do their TV commercials. We do their creative fundraising, all that kind of stuff. So in that group, within the group, we have 9 manufacturing operations, and I'm probably most closely aligned with them. I have a long 40 plus years in direct mail printing, and have been around a while. So my job is mostly just to help us stay current with technology, make sure we're using the best equipment, the best software, and making sure all of our operations are properly trained.
And talking about that line of business, is that a very common line of business? I mean, do you have a lot of competition in that particular charity kind of thing in the US?
What's interesting is we are the largest in the U.S. that does this kind of work. We have 1 or 2 other fairly large competitors, and then the rest of the work seems to be scattered through the regular commercial letter shop world. So, we brought that whole supply chain platform together And so that's why we're able to be as large as we are.
And if you look at your company and the history you just said that you have from being in that industry and in this industry, is it also a very competitive market in relation to keep your cost low and to be as efficient as possible and being still be on the top of everything when it comes to being innovative and smart, or is it less competitive in your opinion?
No, I think so. I've been in the nonprofit space now for going on 4 years. Prior to that, I spent the rest of my time in the general commercial space. And I don't think there's a lot of big difference. I mean, you have to be efficient cost-wise, regardless of whether you're doing it for a charity or you're doing it for, American Express. Everybody wants manufacturing efficiencies, cost reductions, and they want innovative formats. I think what's more interesting, probably in the nonprofit space, is because you're not selling a product, but rather soliciting donations, the creativity goes off the charts. We've got salespeople, if they could figure out a way to put a stick in an envelope, they would mail a stick.
and hopefully automated, right?
Hopefully automated. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And if you look at it being in that spot, just also prior to your focus on what you do right now, I mean, the technology has developed quite a lot in the past. Yeah, it's a rapid pace. In year over year, it continues to develop very fast. How do you, as a company, cope keeping up to date with the new technologies around?
Well, that has been, so I bought my first digital press when I was with another company in 2010. And that press is no longer in service at that company. In fact, it was gone before I left 4 years ago. And what you find is this is a different investment path than what we had traditionally in printing. In printing in letter shops, it wasn't uncommon to see 30-year-old equipment sitting in all the plants continuing to run. But in the last, I would say, 10 years, particularly since digital print has taken off, you've seen a huge shift. As the new technology improves and improves, you have to decide, how you're going to buy this equipment, how long you're going to decide to depreciate it over, because kind of like with TVs now, these digital presses, they probably got a 3 to 5 year shelf life. And then if you're going to remain a top competitor and have the best technology to offer your customers, you're going to have to keep upgrading. It's a much different than when you bought a old Heidelberg press, an M1000, and you ran it for 35 years, and all you did, fix your rollers and bearings every so often.
A last question in this round, because I also want to learn a little bit about Jeff before we move on, is of course, is it a concern to you? I mean, in Europe, when it comes to statements and a lot of this transactional kind of mail, it has moved very much to digital formats. I know in the US, you still have requirements that insurance papers and bank statements, such things like that, needs to be on paper-based, right? Is that something that you see as a potential threat to your business, that things could go digital, or do you as a company offer the opportunity to basically deliver in whatever format your customers prefer to?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two parts. First, generally, you're right. There's still the requirement to offer paper-based communications in the statement world, banking, things like that. And you are seeing people continue to do that. And I don't know that ever goes away completely. But on the marketing side, whether it's direct mail or commercial marketing, where you're offering bank cards or whatever, there has been a big shift towards using multiple channels to get the message out. And the most effective multi-channel messaging is done when you can coordinate a mail piece hitting a mailbox and an email piece or an SMS text hitting a phone or email box at the very close to the same time, and they play off of each other. And the companies that have been successful in providing that to their customers, those customers have seen 100% increase in their response rates. So it's not a threat that I don't think paper-based ever goes away completely, because there's a whole different science around that. And we don't see, when people try to market digitally only, that they get the same response rate as they do if they do paper only. It's when you combine the two that you see the real improvements.
which is why
a lot of with QR codes, QR codes coming to life and those kind of things. It's almost made it, it's print that drives you to other forms of media, because once you've clicked on it with your phone and, so great. Okay, I'm dying to see some of the stuff you do, I've got to say.
Jeff, you said to us when we spoke last week, you said that you sat in a session with Dave, and that he was maybe one of the reasons why you chose to go into this industry, right? So let's hear a little bit about your company, because you don't exactly have 3,000 employees, right?
No, we're a lot smaller. We're a regional provider, is what I would call us. We really have about 33 employees. But going back in 2017, when I was beginning my journey to understand inkjet and finishing, and was this an avenue that we could take our company through, and should we, because it's a large investment when you have 33 employees. I went to an event in Florida and spent a few days admiring Dave. Dave, probably he don't remember me, but
that was the Think Ahead conference, wasn't it? Was it the Think Ahead conference? Yeah.
But I was impressed with his knowledge and what he was saying, and what he was telling us that we needed to do if we was going to survive. And I came back emboldened that we need to do this. And so it was a journey. It was a 2-year journey for me to get from offset, nearline, traditional finishing to where I'm at. And never look back. Love it. Again, a small company in Kentucky.
And I think one thing is quite interesting, because one of you have chosen an online strategy, and one have chosen a near online strategy. Who has done what?
I'm inline.
You're inline, okay.
Yes. And I'm nearline, and I think it reflects the differences of our customer base.
So what kind of customers do you have, Jeff?
We're similar. I have about 68% is nonprofit. The rest is made up of traditional marketing, college and universities. What makes us a little different is that when we analyzed our business, we really have about 7 or 8 different types or templates that we're running through these equipment. So our changeovers, we have them down. Some companies are doing something different every day, die cutting and doing a lot of funky things to it. That's not us. We run a lot of 8.5, 11, 8.5, 14, 8.5, 17 for faux checks. But inline fit us perfectly. I would never go back. Now, if I had Dave's volume, I may not be able to do that. So being a regional player, I mean, America is, I come from a country where the total population is 5.5 million people. So I can't really know anything what you're talking about. But I'm just saying that being a regional player out of Kentucky, what size of market are you addressing? Well, I guess I call us regional, and we actually do work with some of Dave's companies. So we do work from Washington to really California. What we don't have is the really large customers. We don't fool with the American Expresses. We don't fool with the Visas, but our run sizes are pretty good. We run a large run for us is 700,000 units, letters. And a small, we go down to our equipment to 5,000. We'll put a 5,000 run on there if we can daisy chain a few of them.
Yeah, of course.
So we do offer our services across from Florida to California. But really speaking, I'm probably within a 250-mile radius of Kentucky.
That's when you go out visiting people, right? When you can do that. Yeah. Okay. Final question before I will hand over the torch to you, Lance. I know that both of you will probably have difficulty answering it because you may have multiple, but I was just wondering, this session is about the MBO roll-fed finishing equipment, of course, but what kind of devices are feeding your finishing equipment? I'm a little curious on that too.
What's
our printing press? You mean the printing presses?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I know I'm running a screen 520 TrueJet, and Dave has a couple, I believe.
Yeah, we have 5 ZZ screens, TrueJets as well. but they're a faster machine, so they're running 721 feet a minute. And then we also have one of the 520 HD ADs, which is their newest, higher quality 500 foot a minute press that we use in one of the shops that does a little bit more of the commercial work.
Mm. And how good do you think these presses works together with MBO's offerings? I mean, is it seamless integrated, or is it a lot of work to get it to work?
Well, again, mine is nearline, so
so you don't have the same issue.
And I'm doing my perfing and stuff in line, but then I roll it back up and take it to the MBO.
Okay.
It was a little hard at first, just because we do a lot of testing and we did a lot of setup just pulling plain paper through the marking device. Well, then when you introduce water and ink to it and heat, and then 4 seconds later you're trying to handle it, you change its personality. But everything has a learning curve. I mean, everything does. Once you get it, we're pretty good at it now. 2 weeks in, I was scratching my head, but it's been a good marriage. It really has. MBO
I think, as you said, there's no going back now. Because it's a challenge in the beginning. I think most of them are integrating, getting the inkjet, understanding inkjet, and then the finishing. And now there's just no going back. So, it's the positive, huh?
Oh yeah.
And Lance, you're the one that invited Jeff and Dave to this session. And as I said to you the other day, I take at least a couple of customers that appreciate your work and the way you do things. And what I realized, because for the audience, I just want to share a little secret, because Lance, he said to me, I'm not sure we can do it in such a short time. And then when I spoke to Dave and Jeff and Lance last week, I realized that you were talking about whiskey and beers and family and a lot of other things that was not really, I mean, we want to hear it, but it's not really related. So have you guys been able to boil it down to a format that we can use here?
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up session where you let us just talk about brown spirits. So.
We had a great bourbon. Our practice section was all about bourbon, so that was.
That would have been perfect, because it's our last session, and we could have had a few drinks here, Morton. I told you.
I know. Well, actually, I'm going to get a COVID test after this session, because I'm going to France on Sunday for a job. So it's like I wouldn't come to the doctor and have a PCR test smelling out of alcohol. So do it yourself, please.
Yeah.
So guys, Gene and I, we will turn off the camera and the microphone, and you take it away. We will be listening we will be listening to the entire session, and when we're finished, we will hopefully have some questions from the audience, as well as we have some questions for you. So I look very much forward to this session, and if you need anything from us, just shout out.
Thank you. So Morton, thank you very much for starting the platform. I wanted to take a couple of minutes. One of the things we learned after talking to Morton during our practice sessions and talking over the markets is that there are a lot of people worldwide, outside of America, I will say, that did not know exactly what MBO offered for roll-fed finishing. We are so widely known for our sheet-fed commercial offset folding and such that a lot of people assume that that's what we did, and that's all we did. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. We have a very wide range of finishing components and modules, and we developed the roll-fed finishing out all the way back to 2008, I believe, or 7 is when we started that launch. It's been very successful. We've got a few hundred lines in America doing some very different things. And I wanted to play off of what Dave and Jeff were saying a minute ago, that we don't cater to that transactional type space, really. MBO has grown up in the commercial market for the most part, commercials and books and marketing and such. And that's where our expertise lies. That's where we really can make an impact, have a great ROI. And then you also have to look at that inline versus offline type of capability. Most all of our lines are offline in America. We are fortunate to have Jeff show the inline system. But really, that's a little bit out of the norm here. I would imagine in Europe that might play a little different. It might be much more balanced. In America, we take economies of scale a little bit. The finishing and the press lines don't always match up. Sometimes there's more presses than finishing lines, and sometimes there's less. It depends on the speeds and the mismatch of the printing capability to the finishing capability. But I guess, guys, if you could bear with me just for a moment, I thought what I would do, since I'm sure talking about it is not near as good as seeing it, what I thought I would do is play a little video clip that I made. Once I realized we needed to explain to some of this market that MBO has a wide line of finishing products, I made a video that takes, I don't know, 6 or 7 different solutions, and I put it together in a clip. So this takes about 2 minutes. If the audience could bear with me, I'll play it. I'll try to narrate just a touch over the top of it. And then Jeff was gracious enough to give us some video of his line running in line, and I'll play that too. And that'll give you a little visual of MBO, and then I'm done. I'll turn it back over to Jeff and Dave, and we can talk a little bit about finishing and their experience. So roll-fed finishing from MBO tends to be in that commercial space. This is our classic for MBO. It shows the MBO buckle folding technique running in line with a sheeter. Again, we don't care what the cutoff is anymore. It's not like the offset conventional finishing. We can finish to any length. Here we show some very high speeds, making classic letters and putting them out in bundles. That's a classic in the United States. Saddle stitching is a big product here in the United States for making brochures and manuals and such. We build the front end systems for roll-to-roll entry into saddle stitching systems. Here you see the Presto 2 digital stitcher and this is folded product now. So this is really a high productivity machine. We're able to put a lot of pages into the stitching line, and we can get a very highly productive system. It's very fast make ready, roll fed, going into the stitch product. One of the most prolific lines here in America they tend to be a little bit more custom. They're self-mail type products, and they usually involve something more special than just putting a folded letter into an envelope, not in that transactional space. This is something we put together with scores and perforations, and we can do that dynamically also. And here we see a similar product where we're tipping on a card. This happens to be a product in an environment of a very specialized environment. You can see that card being tipped onto the product. Book blocks, always something MBO has been involved in. We make books, have been making books in the offset business forever. Very similar technology on the back end. We feed it with roll, and we can build book blocks with signatures. As you see, they can be glued together or not, and they're beautiful final products. And then here you see the brochure products. This is a classic. This is a glued actually product, and it comes right off the roll. There's no extra finishing. Goes through the buckle folder. You can see the glue heads. The product coming out is ready to go in and be mailed. So I think I hope that gives you a little bit of a visual look at what we do, and gets us kind of out of that making a flat sheet, right? MBO is not necessarily going to be the company that makes a flat sheet where you take it and go do something with it later, right? We believe that the ROI from the investment comes through with actually getting the finished product off the back end of the machine. And I think you'll see that after we see Dave and Jeff talk for a minute. So I'll wrap my presentation up. That's what I wanted to say. I think, Jeff, I'd like to lead in just a little bit with your system and have you expand a little bit more. And maybe what I'll do is I'll play that video you gave me to show, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So this is one of our few inlines in America. As Jeff said, it was a screen true press. We have pretty classic front end unwinding going into the press. And since this is an inline system, we do have the full system from unwind through the press on into the finishing system. Exit of the press, there's a buffer going into the sheeting line. And at this point, I believe, Jeff, you said the products were in the kind of a classic length for our market, was 11, 14, 17 such.
Yeah, that one's 8.5, 14 right there. Yeah.
So I think this one is actually showing a classic here from you, which is, we call it a slit and nest. For others around the world, the slit and nest is where a product is folded up and the edges are trimmed in a fashion that leaves a coupon type slip inside the letter. Correct, Jeff?
That's exactly what we're doing, yes.
So here we're folding, I believe if it was a 14, there's a 4-panel letter fold, and we leave the edge hanging out just a little bit. And then this unit here is a cutting unit, and it cuts the edge off to leave that coupon slip inside that folded product ready to go. So from an inline standpoint, Jeff, maybe talk just a little bit about completing the product and how the finishing fit into that model for you.
Yeah, well, just a quick, backstory, I guess. We actually put this in September 2018. Prior to that, we was an offset shop, cut sheet shop, and we finished everything offline. For us, it became a decision after I sat through some sessions and went through some events, and Dave actually helped us. We decided we was touching the product too many times. We was touching it when it come off the press. We was touching it when we perfed it. We was touching it when we lasered it. We was touching it when we was folding it. And for us, it just made sense for our clients. We did a deep dive into who we service, what kinds of verticals do we serve, and it made sense for us to do an inline. We looked around at some competitors. We looked at Hunkler, we looked at TechNow, and everybody knows the names. But for us, the MBO solution was just a better solution. It was cost-wise, it was better. And also the ability to service it played a huge role, that we do our own maintenance. And so we wanted to be able to do that. We're a very small shop. And it just made sense for us to do the inline system. We actually chose an inkjet machine screen and then figured out how we was going to finish it. I don't know if that was put in the
that's a classic
or not, but we made a decision. Then we said, now we're going to finish it, and we started that journey. But the whole thing took about 2 years for us to make the decision, walk through it, look at the numbers, and say, can we pay for this? Again, we're a very small company, about $5 million in sales, and we had to make the right decision, because if we didn't make the right decision, it could be our last decision. So it has worked out beautiful for us. Other than the first couple of weeks, everybody has issues the first couple of weeks trying to get something to work, but we would never go back to our old way of doing it. Our old way, again, offset, cut sheet. We would never go back. Our production people, our production foreman would hang me if I tried to do it, because they love the product we're putting out, and how fast we can turn a project from send it from the computer, the machine comes on, and in 40 seconds we're having finished product come out the end. That used to be 3 or 4 days to get a finished product to the inserter. And so it is night and day changed us for the better.
So the return on investment look at things would be going back to your offset process. Was it sheet fed or web fed in your offset process shell originally?
It was both. We run both. We run roll fed presses. We run sheet fed presses. And
then you put them back through toner boxes to put the data back on them?
Yes, and that was horrible. And we still have to do that sometimes. You're never going to fully get away from it, but we've never looked back from getting away from the toner boxes and then finishing in line. Never looked back.
Yeah. So the process, and we see a lot of that in America. I think, Dave, you're really familiar with that also. We have a lot of that in America where the people are using an offset, either a roll or a sheet process, and using then various finishing configurations to put the data on and put and sometimes it's things like perforations, and in your case you'd have to add a buck slip to a letter to do that. That wouldn't be very common to do offline in a small inserting type operation. You'd have to do that separately.
Yes.
So the ROI should have been not only the time, but there was quite a bit of labor involved in the steps, I would assume. Is that correct?
Yeah. When we looked at it, we sat down, and again, we really had to understand, could we pay for this system? And as we started looking at the jobs as through attrition, as we took our press operator, he now runs this, one guy runs this entire line for us. So as people, we started moving people around a little bit, but we took a 4-man job to a 1-man job. And that helped us pretty good. Our ROI, not exactly sure what it is, but it's very good. It's very good. Our accounting people love it because it's what makes money. And that's at the end of the day, you got to make money. That's all we got to do. We got to get the product out. It's got to be on top of it. It's got to be able variable 2-side. You got to please the customer, but you got to make money. And this MBO line has helped us really rise to the top in our regional where we're at. It's done very well.
So if I could switch, Dave, maybe we could talk for a minute. You've got, I'm sure, similar ROI calculations and such, but you're nearline, bigger operations. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the scale and what some of your experiences were there.
Yeah. So for us, the decision to go nearline it's a combination of things. Number one, the nonprofit space and the customers that we do. We also own a bunch of creative agencies. So we have a tendency to design complicated, high-touch pieces with a lot of personalization in them and some crazy folding. So we can't put everything onto the machine that the MBO machine that we've got. We've got multiple devices from you guys for different applications. The most expensive piece of this equation is the digital press. So part of the decision for us is, do you want to put an expensive finishing line on the back of a very expensive press, knowing that you can't do everything on that finishing line, and therefore you're going to have it sitting a lot of the time unable to be run. So for us, moving it nearline, we can optimize what we're doing on the press and then optimize what we're doing on that nearline folding device. And like I said, we have other folding devices that handle different, more complex folding. So for me, I'm trying to optimize my equipment platform and do the most work I can possibly do on those presses, keep the high-speed folding line that we're talking about optimized with the best fit of work with the least amount of make-readies, and optimize both platforms, and then put the more difficult stuff off to, fold-only lines that are built for, with 8-page and 16-page sections, 32-page sections, where we've got to go and make a number of different directional folds. I think the big thing for us too is that our because of the way our work mix is, you also run into a little bit of a different situation when the shop gets as big as ours, that Lance has a little more control over with a lot less employees. And that is the skill set of an operator that you're going to have run the press, run the folding device. All our presses have perf units on there as well. So there's multiple pieces of equipment that would be strung together. And you've got to have a pretty different kind of operator that can handle being the bindery guy and the print guy. And again, because of our just scale, it's harder for us to get that level of operators on 4 shifts, 7 days a week. So that also plays into why we do some of the nearline things that we do.
You said something I think that is very. It's a big pattern in the space we play in over here, and this is much more of an environment where you don't necessarily know what types of product you're going to have to finish in a month or 6 months. You have to be a very flexible type of a business to do that. And those are the types of customers we end up mostly working with. We've normally, I want to really make a point of what you guys have put out, that finishing in this market is not making a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and putting it into a stack. That actually would not work. We tend not to play in that space, right? I mean, that's why we're working with customers like yourself and others, that commercial print space. So now, when they get into the touches that you're speaking of, I think that really would lower the efficiency of a very expensive digital printing press. Right. You might go over some of the numbers, but I believe the digital engines are running in way over 90%. They just go roll to roll.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. If you threw the finishing lines that I know we have with you on them and complicated things with glue and perfing and cutting and tipping things on, I can't imagine that they would stay at 95%.
No, and I'll give you an example, kind of a parallel example. We do a lot of personalized labels for our customers. Anybody that gets the nonprofit packages knows you get those return address labels and the sticker packs and all that kind of stuff. So we print all of that stuff on a sand and press. Then we put a die cutter behind it and a foil applicator and all the different things that make those beautiful labels. Well, you take a press that's rated at 900 feet a minute, and when you're making those labels, you're down to running 500 feet a minute real quick. And so to the point, and that's what I was trying to make earlier, is given the price of these digital presses, you really don't want to take it and put so much stuff behind it that you're actually reducing the output of that press by 40, 50%. The exception is when you have very standardized output packages where your format statement houses do very well at this because they're doing statements. So they're not. Yeah,
it's always the same.
They're not doing drop cuts and all the different funny things that we're trying to do. And I know Jeff, because of his work mix, has been able to standardize some of his package offerings and stuff and make this very efficient inline. But the bigger you get, the more customers you take on, the harder it is to maintain that at any kind of scale.
So Jeff, question for you. I think if I remember right in our discussions, one of the things about the modular nature of the finishing side of that line you have was important to you. And that was, I thought you were talking a little bit about the future, and your world may change a little bit and you may have to do some other things. So I believe that modularity and the ability to change was important to you.
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure if people noticed on the video, we oversized every piece of equipment that you saw there. We run 9-inch rolls on 50-inch to cut it down to an 8.5 US standard kind of thing. But as our volume grows, we're doing about 40 million letters a year, something like that. As our volume grows, we'll need to drop another engine in there. Yeah, as you notice, we're a single engine duplex. So Dave runs twin engines. So at some point, as we grow, we may want to drop another engine in there. All our equipment will take a 19-inch as opposed to a 9-inch right now. So I wouldn't have to reinvest in all the MBO finishing. It's just I got to add some guides and some rollers and a few things, and I've doubled my output. So the ability for the MBO and even the screen to play on the 1-up side and then grow into a 2-up side is real important for us. It's real important. So we can buy an engine and double our production with the same equipment that we have, which was very, very good for us.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's important to point out, Jeff, is the fact that with the equipment that you've got, today it's inline, but God forbid some big change comes along and you have to separate the MBO equipment because of how modular it is. I could take my nearline stuff and move it inline if I needed to.
Yes.
Just like you could take your inline stuff and move it nearline if you needed to, because of the flexibility of the design of those pieces of equipment.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah, I think you saw on the video we had in the clip video and also on the video for Southeast, that the way the pieces went together, they're separated. It's not modularity that is put in a box. It's modularity literally in a commercial finishing environment, which is where we grew up, right? And MBO has built. Actually, you saw it on the video from Southeast Mail. Some of those components were actually from our H&H group. They're not MBO. They're MBO core product from the commercial offset side of life, right? You saw the folders and the cut sheet and the sheeter, but that slitting unit was actually something that came out of our H&H group, and we're, I think most of the customers we have in the United States have the ability in a year from now, if things change, they have a very a good opportunity to change it for the better and to go right along with what their customers need.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the H&H, Lance, because I do think that's one of the my most recent purchase. We put we have the slit and merge, the plow units, and now in the last purchase that we did, and we have 5 of your lines now, I think. We did put the H&H in because we found that, our output on drop cuts or slit to nest, whatever you want to call them, trim to nest, the buck slips that are nested in the product, we're running on that machine per hour what it would take us to do 3 or 4 offline machines.
Yeah.
So labor savings there is incredible.
Yeah, that H&H side of our business has been known around the world to be involved in that direct mail market with doing, we call them the fun things or the goofy things, right? You're able to put embellishments onto the product out of that group, and they have the equipment to do that. So, well, great. Morton, I believe we're running to the end of our time. Unless you think of another question I missed, I think we'll turn it back over. Maybe we've got some questions from the audience. I'm not sure.
We have actually questions from the audience, but before we take those questions, I have a few questions on my own. And see, being the editor and the owner of this show, I can ask all the questions I want. I don't even have to raise my fingers. The only thing I have to be challenged to is that Gene and I, we are both very engaged, so sometimes we speak over each other, right, Gene?
I'm excited that we just want to both ask the questions. So it's a matter of who gets it first. I wish I had a mute button for Morton every now and then. Okay?
Many do that. So one thing that I must admit that I am not. I know a lot of things in surface of everything, a lot of things, and not the details of anything. And when I listen to your conversation, I can clearly hear that you are specialists in this particular environment where you do these letter shopping kind of activities. I was just wondering how important is. I mean, you didn't touch it at all, and I'm just wondering if it's a give and take, or it's because it's different needs in your segment. What about automation? The level of automation in with these things, how is Jeff? How is it? I mean, even not being an online solution, is automation something that you worries about at all?
Well, we assume that that's a given, right? So my Nearline has got as much automation as I can pack into it, and I'm pretty sure Jeff is the same way.
So to what extent is it from sizing documents and the rollers and all the fittings and things like that, or is it more in the flow of getting files from press to the binding equipment, or where, how, at what level does the automation give into you?
Well, I will say that we have a very mixed bag here in America. And the reason is because we are working with a commercial shop generally that requires what I would call an incredibly high level of flexibility.
Yeah.
And the old way, all the internal guys here at MBO, I've been around for quite a while. We talk about it being a parking lot. I don't know if that translates over into German and the other languages, but we kind of use this parking lot concept, right? So, and this is sort of the way, especially Dave's lines are set up. They have a lot of different modules, and they might not be using them all at the same time. The lines are meant, the way they're designed is you roll one in and it's quick. It plugs in, and now you do have to do some setup. And there is a cost versus, there's a cost benefit, right? It's a law of diminishing returns is what we always used to call it. How much automation dollar are you going to spend to do that function? And it's very difficult when you're talking about a line that can do a lot of things that you can't plan for. It's very difficult to automate it cost effectively. So a lot of the modules, I'll admit it, they're more manual. Now they're automated from the way they plug into the line. They connect up.
But Lance, I think you misunderstand my motivation for asking.
Sorry.
No, because I'm just asking because one of the things that is a takeaway from what Jeff said, it goes from 4 operators to 1 operator. There's a huge costing, but you don't go from 1 operator to 0 operator. So if you can still get to that line of work, then still the efficiency that you gain from this is just something that's significant, right?
So there's 2 areas, Morton, that you got to think about when you think about automation. The first area is labor reduction. And so, with our lines, we put things like a Palamedes bander on the back of it, and that eliminates labor. The other things that you can do is you can invest in automation for your plate settings and all that kind of stuff with an Explorer type console for your MBO. And that really only is good if you have a lot of repetitive work that you're going to be able to store those settings, come back and reuse. So, you invest in the automation based on your ultimate goals and what your work mix tells you to do. But the biggest one is always try to reduce labor and make ready time.
And touch. Yeah, the touches comment is probably what we call automation more than anything.
Yeah.
Right. We go from a 4-touch environment to 1. And that's automating that process.
You should be able to sell more machines if you can do that equation with all your potential customers in America, right?
What I've just heard from all the presentation, to me, is almost, you guys come from a litho background. My original training was at Heidelberg. And I think that what I've seen product-wise, I also know MBO coming from a litho the litho background. This would really, really appeal to the offset printer. You've got a robust press that you can see is going to last you for a long time. And as you said, it's got the flexibility to make changes as your business needs. But it's one of those, you make an investment and you're going to keep maybe upgrading in the next 10, 15 years. You're going to upgrade your inkjet press. However, you guys have got a lasting solution. And I think the other great point was, which I know with a lot of litho printers, is they want to do their own servicing. They've got engineers on site, and you guys offer that option of you can service it, you can look after it, because then it's in their hands. You're not relying and waiting for a technician or an engineer to come along and do this. This is all in control, which again gets to automation, time to market, uptime, which it's music to any offset printer's ears if you can have all of this, and it's something he understands. So it's a great business model.
So one of the interesting things you sort of touched on is if you buy equipment that you are incapable of maintaining and servicing yourself, you will also struggle to run that equipment. This is my experience for years and years. The more complicated, the more dependent you are on the manufacturer, the less efficient you will be in actually producing work on that piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Jeff,
Jeff, a question for you. Sorry, and then Morton, I'll hand over to you again. So you've got the inline solution. What happens when things go wrong? And then is it a matter of are your engineers looking after both, or is it your problem or his problem, or the one says it's Screen's problem and the other one says it's MBO? What happens when things go wrong?
Was that my question?
Yeah, it was, Jeff. It was.
things do go wrong, and we're always trying to figure out what are we going to do when they do go wrong. But I've got to be honest with you, we may run weeks without having an issue out there that's going to stop my line. Dave said it correctly when he said you can't stop your most expensive piece of equipment, which is the screen. You cannot stop those inkjet printers. So we're always worried about what's going to go wrong. It does happen, but we have an incredible service maintenance department in-house. Has been working on MBOs for 35 years. And let me tell you something, he's good. So we don't experience a lot of inkjet downtime because of the MBO downtime. I'm not going to say it's non-existent because we know it's there, but for the most part, we don't stop our press. MBO, its uptime is phenomenal. It really is.
Okay.
The other big change in the equipment these days is it used to be when you did a multiple manufacturer integration, there was the fight between the pieces of equipment to get handoffs and signals set up so that everything worked. And usually the third party would come in and figure all that out. Almost all the manufacturers now have gone to more of an open architecture in the way they design their PLCs. And so you can string multiple things together and get them to talk without the challenges that we used to have 10 years ago.
That makes sense. Jeff, I can't help think about that. Yeah, that you also kind of future-proofed. You're as you said in your presentation or the questions that we're having the opportunity to expand because you actually double-sized your production equipment. That must also be, a very, very huge advantage that you can do that in order to be, because now as you said before, when you got started with this, everything was new. And of course, it took some time to get used to, but now people know the screen. Now people know the MBO. So when you add another press, that will be almost like instant productivity gain without any downtime, right?
Well, we think so. We believe that when the day comes that we will add another print engine, another screen, and we do see it on the horizon. We think the path to productivity is much shorter than the first time because it's running. Yes, it's going to be a lot easier transition for us. So we're looking forward to that. So we're trying to grow the business.
One other thing probably worth thinking about too, with the transition of all this equipment over time, you're seeing, like I said, better handoffs in the technology, but you also have the ability to cross-train people across this equipment much more easily than you could in the past, because again, that technology, the integration points are so much less disruptive. But the other thing that anybody that's ever seen me speak on any other panel will know that I say every time, the most important thing that you need to do when you make a decision to go down this path, and this is what Jeff and I talked about all those years ago, is you really got to look at your workflow. It's all about, at the end of the day, you can have the best pieces of equipment lined up on the floor. If you haven't thought through the workflow of how you physically get the data through the process, and when it switches from data to paper, the next handoff, that's what will kill people getting up and started. It's really about workflow and understanding.
Yep.
Let's take some questions. We have some questions. So we have Tom Googles here. He's asking Gobbles. It says, do you both run coated paper inline or online in combo with the screen, which apply mid-heavy ink coverage?
I currently don't. I can run gloss paper, but I don't. And that's one of the reasons it's easier for me to be inline, is that I stay in the 60, 70, 80 pound offset text arena. Dave's going to be different, I think.
Yep. So we do run some of that. We don't run it on all of our screen equipment because, like I mentioned, we have ZZs, but our newest screen
HDs, of course,
HDAD, we've got different ink sets and stuff. And for that, Jeff hit it right on the head. I didn't put anything but perfing on the back of that particular unit because of the type of product that we're producing on there. It's better to move it to a nearline situation where I can have very specific controls so I don't end up with scuffing and other quality issues.
And his follow-up question was basically, does this cause any issues in your finishing? And that you just answered that one, right?
Yeah. So Morten, a comment about.
Hey, sorry.
A comment about that paper issue. We happen to have a couple of customers that have the screen presses in very particular environments. We are most prolific when working with the commercial type of inkjet press. That's where our solutions have the biggest applications. So the Canon Pro Streams, the HP T series, that 250, 240, those, the Screen HD. If you take those three presses, that's a big chunk in America for that commercial environment. And we came out of that commercial side of life. Our customers know us from the folding side of life and from the H&H direct mail. They don't know us from the copier type of platform.
No, of course. Yeah,
letters, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And I think that really helps with the whole self-maintenance and how I run my business. We're kind of in tune with that much better.
And that answers actually the questions from Paul Kucha, who's asking what inkjet manufacturers does MBO work with? And you just say basically you are vendor agnostic in that perspective, right? I mean, you work with pretty much everything, right?
Yeah, we work with everyone. But our equipment tends to be much more in the commercial platforms. So those three are, and those are the Fujis and the Xerox and the Ricos. We work with anyone. So
I was just about to say that also. One thing is that we are so gentlemen to talk about and ladies to talk about the competitors. But I mean, as you have now become a part of the Komori family, I mean, you have digital presses in Komori as well. That's Konica Minolta, the Lander. So obviously you have a lot of advantages because you know everything from how to put inks on paper in different kind of technologies to how to bind it, right?
Yeah, and actually the Komori family has that, the IS-29, and we're going to be coming out with that NS-40. Now, though we haven't talked about that sort of thing. We've been pretty well into the roll-fed market, but those sheet-fed products they couldn't be any more perfectly fit to what MBO does. And I'm sure the very smart people back in Japan and Germany knew that when they put the companies together. It's not hard to figure out.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Well, so that's a real positive. You're going to see upgraded sheet-fed components from MBO that will handle those sheets. Now, there's a whole series of other things going on with those sheets, right? They're digital, they're variable. The coatings and things that they put on them are different. So we're going to finish them different, as well as we do the roll-fed, right? I don't even know if people know that we build dynamic perforations that go inside the press line, and we build a coating. We build a UV and aqueous coater for the web.
And one thing that is maybe also part of the equation in relation to the marriage between MBO and Komori. I mean, I think Komori is one of the very large OEMs for paper transport in a lot of different equipment. I mean, they have a lot of skill set in that segment, right?
That's right.
So that will probably also benefit future generations of MBO equipment. We have a question from Rob Ents, and it's for both Dave and Lance. You're taking risks in technology investments. Maybe it's Jeff and Dave then. You're taking risks in technology development investment. What brought you to the point you could trust MBO to move ahead with a purchase? Did you have any doubts on that journey?
Wow.
Okay.
That was at least a very direct question. I didn't read it before I read it to you. You can see that probably. But what do you think, guys?
Well, for me, I'll be real quick. We're an MBO shop. We already had MBO equipment in our shop. So for us, the learning curve and to get the faith that they can do it, it was already there. Of course, we did our due diligence. We went and looked at some different shops that was running nearline and running the equipment, but we knew MBO could do it. We've been running MBO since 2007. So for us, it was just an extension of a partnership that we already had.
And I probably haven't been as dedicated an MBO customer as Jeff has. Again, my career prior to coming to Moore, I was with another very, very big commercial shop. And we had everything. We had Hunklers in one site, and we had MBO in another site, and we had some GEP products. And so here's what I'll say about all of that. I'm very happy with everything we bought from MBO, and I think they make very good products. But it's also just like with picking a digital press. You've got to pick the right one for the activity that you're trying to do. So every manufacturer out there has some pro or con or a sweet spot for their equipment, and you owe it to yourself when you're making these kind of technology risks and investments to do the research and make sure that you pick the right stuff. Quickly, I'll just say that before I bought our first digital press at my previous employer, we actually went and did print tests in 6 different manufacturers' shops with our files and our paper so that we could understand what the real differences were. And I just encourage anybody making these big investments to
do that, of course. Yeah. But I can't help think about.
He doesn't worry because he knows he's going to win, right, Lance?
Yeah. But I can't help think about. I mean, to be honest, I think that what your answers are great, but I think that I don't know Rob, but I think that maybe he's referring to the fact that before MBO was acquired by Komori, it was in a kind of tedious situation being acquired by Heidelberg that wasn't approved. I mean, I think it was maybe from an uncertainty in that perspective, whether that gave you any concerns in that before investing in it. But I mean, I think that for most people, I have never doubted that MBO in some shape would exist. And I think that the marriage you have with Komori seems to be a very strong and dedicated from both sides, right?
Yeah, if I could say one thing about that a little bit, the last 2 years have been fraught with rumors and buyouts and such. And MBO is an incredibly strong company, always has been. We're on the leading edge of many of the technologies on the commercial side of the business. And in America, especially, I'll tell you some statistics on the company. Working in the roll-fed, maybe around the world, you'll be very surprised, but almost 60% of the sales volume that we do in equipment is going into roll-fed finishing now. So anybody that thinks that we are not making an investment into the future of that inkjet technology is just not understanding what our customer base is around the world. Now, that doesn't take anything away from the offset side of life, and we are absolutely going forward, in big guns with Komori around the world with offset folding technology. Also, we've connected the dots there too, right? All the software and everything's coming in.
I have no questions. I have no questions about that. I have actually here in the chat shared an interview we did with Thomas Heininger, who is the CEO of MBO in Europe, and I think he's the CEO, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a very, very good interview, very stressing all the positives that is to say about this. So I'll just say that if anybody has any concerns about that, I think that just to underscore that the relationship with Komori and MBO, I think that is a strong given.
And we're excited about it here. Yeah, we're excited about it.
And it will give both technology and a very safe and secure future for everybody who has invested in MBO and Komori. I'm certain about that.
Just one more point on that. I think that anytime, if you've been in this industry any amount of time, when a good company is out there and they're having some financial troubles, but they've got great patents and great technology, I don't get as wrapped up about those rumors because they all land on their feet. Nobody actually really goes away. They may change the nameplate, but that equipment is there somewhere, and that's...
She always lives on. It's true.
Yeah.
People are going to buy that and use it, and it's going to be out there. So good technology stays.
But think about this for a second. In a session like this, you could think about whether that question should be asked or not be asked. I think it's actually very good that we have this discussion because, this is also an example of open communication, because you may end up in a situation where people think they have heard, and maybe now we have talked about, we have addressed it, we have even linked to the head of MBO explaining about all these wonderful things. So I think it's a good takeaway, even though, we're going on a weekend, at least Gene and I are very shortly. I think that you have a full working day ahead of you. So Lance, how many MBO roll-fed installations are you planning to sell this afternoon?
We're taking orders, yeah.
You're taking orders, okay. So, gentlemen and Gene, it's been a pleasure to have you here. It was great to learn from you. This entire week has been, for us, very important to learn and an educational kind of thing. I don't know if any of you have had time to dig into any of the content. Everything is actually on replay right now. This session here will be on replay in 15 minutes again. So you have 36 hours of fantastic content from the brand owners, from the agents, from the direct marketing companies, to publishers, to vendors, to influencers, to, I mean, practically everything that we need to know in this segment of the industry. So Dave, Johannes, thank you very much. Jeff, Fraley, Lance, Martin, Jean, Lloyd, it was a pleasure to see you. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks, Morten.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.